Ranil is a systems ecologist, trained at the University of California, Davis. He developed analog forestry as a response to the critical need of restoring lost forests worldwide. He served as the executive director of the Environmental Liaison Center International in Kenya, senior scientist in Washington, D.C.
That's enough.
Taught at Melbourne and Monash University in Australia. He created the Forest Garden Products FGP certification system. And today, Ranil chairs Earth Restoration in Sri Lanka and is the scientific director at the International Analog Forestry Network with members in 30 countries around the world. Ranil will be followed by Perry Minta Zemfemingo, who holds a degree in forest ecology and silviculture, the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. Perry's been involved in the training of local communities on the techniques of landscape restoration using the AF methodology. He is accredited as an AF trainer of the Cameroon Analog Forestry Network, CAFON. Perry has taken on virtual trainings in Ghana, Uganda, Zimbabwe, and Cameroon with women participants of the Global Alliance for Green and Gender Action GAGA program. Following Perry, we will be joined by Galo Chiriboga from Ecuador, a certified AF trainer, a multimedia communicator, now coordinating the Ecuadorian Analog Forestry Network, REFA, and working with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. Galo's passion is to connect communities and individuals for best results and teamwork without compromising local livelihoods and ecosystems functionality. Diego Tapia, also from Ecuador, is an innovative entrepreneurial farmer. He has investigated alternatives for planting a wide diversity of plants, including cinnamon, ishpingo, sweet pepper, cloves, fruta milagrosa, called miracle fruit, among others. In 2008, Diego founded Ecuaforestar to direct our vision back to the land to showcase the true potential of Ecuador. He planted the first crop in Latin America of miracle fruit along with other species, creating a productive model, applying analog forestry to give high added value to forest products. Along with Galo, he is one of the founders in 2019 of the Ecuadorian Analog Forestry Network. Tatiana Espinosa is our last presenter. Tati has a master's degree in forest management and conservation from Katia Center in Costa Rica. She works in the Amazon region of Madre de Dios, Peru, where she leads the Arbio Peru Association, a member of IAFN, dedicated to promoting the conservation of Amazonian biodiversity involving civil society and the private sector. She has extensive experience in forest management in the Peruvian Amazon and in processes of social adaptation to climate change. She is an IAFN certified trainer, and in the region of Madre de Dios where she works, analog forestry is applied, sharing our methodology. Before taking questions via chat, Ranil will wrap up the session with a reflection on the need to design for the future. We would like to meet for approximately an hour and a half, and at the end, via this Zoom chat, receive your questions or comments addressed to the speakers. Our last three speakers will present in Spanish. Tati, did you decide in English or Spanish?
In Spanish, but the presentation is in English. Part in English, part in Spanish.
Okay. So for those who need translation into English, Galo will help us, I believe, to open up a breakout room, right, Galo? To join.
We should have, I should be the interpreter right now, Isabel, and we should have the interpretation turned on, but we're not, Galo's not managing to turn on the interpretation function right now. So we're actually not sure what to do. I don't know if the only way to solve this is to close the meeting and open it again, but the option that should be there is not currently.
Okay, because that was going to be for the last speakers. The first will be in English, now translation is what we had agreed. So what do you suggest? Because Tati can present in English, and if she needs any help to help her out, but Diego and Diego would need the translation.
Sí.
I don't know if you guys
Miguel,
want
te
to do
conectó
this.
ahí.
The only thing I can think of is to close the session and open it up again, because it's not. But I don't know, Gala. If you're not finding a technical solution on your side, I'm not sure what to do about that.
Yes, I'm so sorry. We tried yesterday and it works very well, but now I don't have the option. I think that it's because we create this meeting before we have these capabilities. So because Diego is the only one that may have need translation. Maybe Juan, do you want to like translate in between the peak of
Do like a sentence by sentence.
Yeah,
I mean, if we have to, right?
yeah, that would be the best. And Tatiana will present in English, so we're okay. So we will proceed. Thank you again for joining. Y Bastian tiene la palabra.
Gracias, Isabel. Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup. I will re-ask everyone to turn the microphones off, please, for the good sound that we shall have, knowing that this meeting is recorded and it shall be used afterwards and broadly channeled. So please, turn your microphones off, and thank you very much. So I have the difficult task to give an introduction to such diverse and competent speakers, included very high quality speakers like the founder and designer of Analog Forestry, here present, Dr. Ranil Senanayake. But I will highlight a few points that are, according to me, the main vision of analog forestry as an ecosystem design program which is planetary, as an answer to the social and climate threats that we are facing today. And in this framework, I would like to value three main points that are, according to me, visionary in the analog forestry methodology. The first point, according to me, is that analog forestry build a real alternative to development, or development alternative. The first point that we shall highlight is that analog forestry bring the fundamental idea that forest is not trees. Forest is not trees. Analog forestry brought at the center of the discussion the fact that biodiversity is what gives a forest its identity. Biodiversity is the key matter in a forest, in the extent that trees account only for 1% of the biodiversity of a forest. And we'll have afterwards in the keynote speeches more information about this idea, but this is the fundamental point, that tree monocultures of fast-growing species like pines and eucalyptus have been damaging as the monocrop industrial agriculture worldwide, impoverishing soils and destroying biodiversity worldwide. So the fundamental first idea of analog forestry is this: forest is not a tree. In a second point, there is the idea that forest and biodiversity has spiritual value. And the more we work with the forest and the more we think like or with a forest, the more we get through the idea that there is an interrelation, a very strong connection between forest and humans. And in this sense, forest does not pertain to the natural world and is not something delinked or different than from human. Forest is necessary for human, and human can help to enhance the forest as its own habitats. And so there is a slowness in the fundamental comprehension of this reality, a slowness that we try to defend. The second point is that analog forestry try to create a linkage between scientific and traditional knowledge. This is very important. In the fundamental etymology, the origin of the word forest, or selva in Spanish, the etymology means something that we put outside, that we ban, or something savage. So in our own languages, maybe not Sinhalese, right? Which is the mother tongue of Dr. Ranil, but in the Latin and Western languages, forest or selva is associated with something which has to be tamed, something that has to be banned. And this is the origin of the very fundamental distinction in the Western world between nature and culture, which assumes that only humans as living beings have culture. And so all the rest is like a backside for a movie where we are the only protagonist. And so in this framework, where we consider forest as nature, we have only two options, whether to protect it or whether to destroy it. And this is where analog forestry brings the idea that there is anthropogenic forest, meaning that humans have created, cultivated, and managed forests all around the history. And so forests are not part of a outside place which is called nature. It's forest is culture. And the most recent advancement of science is only continuing to discover the amazing properties of photosynthetic biomass activity, of the photosynthesis, of the ecosystem services, of the microhabitats, of the mycorrhizas in the soils that creates a living web in the our living skin, which is the soil of the planet. And so this is where we should go, not oppose modern science with traditional knowledge and recognize the value of the traditional knowledge as a great richness and necessary for the future stakes of the climate change and the social threats that we are facing. And finally, and lastly, and I will conclude this introduction, the vision of analog forestry is that we can create bioeconomies for the future, because it is based on the fundamental idea that if we don't recognize the value of the activity of the photosynthetic biomass, we will only destroy it. It has been shown that if the markets and the societies does not recognize the value of the resources or the photosynthetic biomass, the logical consequence will be the destruction or the privatization of these resources. So the bioeconomies have been created because Dr. Ranil Senanayake created one of the first organic certification worldwide in the 80s in Sri Lanka. And this has to be highlighted now that today it has become a big market dominated again by the Western world. We shall recognize this value. Now there is new enterprise which try not to have this compensation idea, which is completely false, because we cannot compare biotic carbon with fossil carbon, right? But the idea of placing a value in order to drive our economies and investments toward the ecosystem restoration. And then I will finish this idea. The proper word of economy in Greek means the rules of the house, right? The oikos nomos. And some economists often say that the definition of economy is the management of scarcity, right? But if we change the paradigm and say, look, oikonomos, the economy has to be analogous to the reality of the ecology, the oikologos, which is the thinking of our house worldwide. Then the economy will be the management of richness, and the great richness of our world. Of course, it's the sun, right? El Surya, and the forest and the plants that have been created by this activity. So thank you very much. I think there is many people from different backgrounds in different activities from many different continents and countries today. And I hope that you can all join us in this great adventure of the ecosystem restoration and the analog forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bastien, for this inspirational and motivational introduction and opening. We will now pass to Ranil. Ranil, do you have the ability now with our share screen?
Yeah, I am now going to, I'm now going to share my screen with you. Let me know if the screen share works. Hold on. Okay, where are we? Share. Working? No. Huh.
Ranil, I have your presentation. If you need, I can.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Are we there?
Not yet.
Okay. In that case, you have my presentation. If I can't load it on, let me see.
Oh, there it is.
You got it?
Yep, it's on.
Okay. So you're going to put it on, right? And I'm going to guide you through it? Or
Yeah.
have I got control?
No, I
Who's got control?
I put it for you, but let
You
me
put it
know
for me.
if you
Okay.
want to change.
All right. Onwards. Is it on? Full screen? Yep.
There it is,
Okay.
full screen. Good.
Great. Thank you. All right. Hello, all. It's been some time. You know, there's a whole lot of people now who are interested in analog forestry, the thing we started off with, to try and restore what was lost. But the problem now is getting even more urgent. And what I want to do today is I want to share some ideas of how we can use analog forestry or analogous thinking as an adaptation and mitigation strategy, because the future is not going to be business as usual. Next, please. Yeah. Why are we concerned and looking at forests? Mostly because forests account for about 75% of the gross primary production, and we'll talk about this later, of the Earth's biosphere, and contain 80% of the Earth's plant biomass. So it is massive in terms of biomass. There's two terms I'm going to use today, biomass and biodiversity. Biomass means the weight of all the living things and what they produce. Biodiversity are the patterns that have been wrought in these living things. Next, please. Next. Hello. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Now, the problem today is that the forests are declining hugely. The living biomass is coming down, as FAO is showing us, and the carbon in the living biomass is coming down. We got to respond. What do we do? Next. Yeah. We have to regenerate the living biomass. And as all of us have discussed, you know, there is analogs of each stage of the forest maturity through the system by human beings. I mean, here we have agriculture as the first serial stage, agroforestry, and on and on. You've all seen this. Next, please. So analog forestry we spoke about, and I will not talk much about it. Other people will, basically, I think. It's basically a silvicultural system, a tree growing system that seeks to create a tree-dominated ecosystem that is analogous to the original mature ecosystem in architectural structure and ecological function. These are the two most important things. The architectural structure of a forest, the original forest, and the ecological function it did is important. We must understand the forest in that manner if we are going to be analogous or similar to it. So it requires somebody who's doing analog forestry to understand a forest in as many perspectives as possible, because that will create a proper analog which reflects the structure and the function of the original forest. Next, please. See, what happened now is development has pushed us back. If you look at this forest, you look right behind, this is Amazonia. You see the Amazon rainforest. They take a few trees out for the market for timber, and then they put cattle on it. Say that's development. And it's not economical. They take it out and they clear the land and they grow an annual crop on it to get some income. The annual crop is there for 3 or 4 years. The soil is washed out and you're on bare bones. And that is what is happening today, the world over, as development. Next, please. See, what's happening is in all ecosystems, there's a maximal sustainable yield of ecosystems from any landscape. And it changes with the levels of consumption pressure exerted on it. And if you look at it here, you will see the first in the woods, there is no impervious surface, and everything goes into the earth. As we move closer and closer to urbanization and development, the infiltration starts going down and the runoff starts getting larger. And of course, the impervious surfaces totally increases. This is the trend the world over, and we are told that this is development. It's a question we have to ask. Next. See, the whole deal of development is that you got to work to buy, work to buy. So happiness is around the corner. You have to work harder, earn more money. You have to get frenetic and run around trying to earn more, to buy more things, to consume. And in the end, what it does, it leads to addiction. And at the moment, human development is being run by an addiction to oil. Next, please. And the service to oil addiction leads to roads, urbanization to replace the farmland. Next. See, when we urbanize, with urbanization, all soil functions cease. What you see here is the organic processes that breathe. The soil breathes with the air, and this has been going on for billions of years since the earth was made. The soil and the air, the atmosphere, and the hydrosphere have been interacting with each other for eons. This is the great cycles of the planet. When we urbanize, we put a pavement, a rigid or flexible pavement over the soil, and we seal the soil forever. We entomb that part of the earth forever. It will never breathe again. And all the functions are now lost, and there is no effort made to replace the functions from increased productivity at other places. And if you look at the soil, there are more microbes in a teaspoon of soil than there are people on the entirety of this earth. And the soil contains about 8 to 15 tons of bacteria, living things. And it is this large component of living matter that provides the energy for sustainable agriculture, and has been so for the last 10,000 years, until the new drive for fossil-derived agriculture, which has now pushed us into an impossible place right now. Next, please. And so how do we restore what remains? We've been told with the forest departments and all the FAOs and the World Banks and everybody rushed out and they're planting monocultures of trees and calling it a forest. It is not a forest, as you can plainly see. And so we have to now see, how do we restore the remnants of the earth that is exposed and what remains? Next, please. And so we worked with analog forestry to try and replace and bring back some of the things we've lost. What you see here is an example of doing analog forestry where on the right-hand side, you see a natural forest, 100% native species. On the left-hand side is the analog forest, 90% exotic species that mimics a natural forest. But as a consequence of growing the analog forest, about 40 to 50% animals, the biodiversity that once existed in this forest is now coming back, and it has space to live back in the analog forest. So what we say is, when we design, we strive for a high B to B ratio, biodiversity to biomass. Next slide, please. And if you look at regeneration, again, one is on the left is natural, and on the right is anthropogenic. On the left is all natural species, on the right is all exotic species. But the effect it has is being analogous or similar to the forest that we lost. Next, please. Next. Yeah. Now, all this activity about is possible by a specialized component of all plants called photosynthetic biomass, chlorophyll. It is chlorophyll that is the first step on life, because it takes the carbon dioxide and water and takes the energy of sunlight and locks the energy of sunlight so that life can use it in all the ecological processes on the planet. Next. And ecosystem services then comes from this activity, comes from the activity of life on the environment. The presence of life, organisms are clearly identified by measuring the biomass and biodiversity. It is the cycling of this biomass that creates the patterns of biodiversity, and it is this activity that generates ecosystem services. Next, please. See, the first act of creation is the creation of biomass, and through which, or because of which, all subsequent activities follow on this planet. And because of that, it is called the primary ecosystem service. The first ecosystem service is that which takes sunlight and ties sunlight and creates an organic molecule, which then can carry on the process of life. And what is produced in that activity are the primary ecosystem services. Next, please. And the primary ecosystem services occurs in the photosynthetic biomass of leaves and plants in all terrestrial ecosystems. The leaves of plants is where the primary ecosystem service occurs. Once the leaves have fixed the carbon and made the sugars and the carbohydrates, then they turned into the secondary ecosystem services, which are the creation of the wood, the timber, the fruits, the flowers, and everything else. So ecosystem services has to be viewed as a cascade, starting with the primary ecosystem service of creating life, and then the secondary and tertiary services that follow after. Next, please. And why we have to study plants all over is, even if we understand that it's the leaves that start driving the primary ecosystem services, different trees, as you see, and different plants have different ratios of leaves, roots, and shoots. So therefore, it is not one size fits all. We have to get out there and do the research to see which species have which performance curves. Next, please. And currently, all of you would have heard of ecosystem services as said by the media, and you will see that they talk about provisioning, regulating, cultural supporting, but it has nothing to do with the functioning of the ecosystem. That is the triangle of life, where you begin at one point with primary productivity and then you move along the food chain. Next, please. So as a consequence, when you look at the ecosystem boundaries, you will see in the primary ecosystem service, the measure would be the action of gross primary productivity. The products would be oxygen, sugars, clean water. Markets exist for all that. The secondary would be the action of the sequestered biomass, which is the lignin and the phytochemicals, the timbers, etc. Markets for that exist. Tertiary, this material then gets incorporated into another animal, a creature or ecosystem. Then the products are the biodiverse biomass. Markets exist. This is how we should look at ecosystem services. We can look at it in the form of a group, like I pointed before, as supporting, provisioning, regulating, etc. But that gets a great confusion because all these things are basically done by estimation rather than measurement. If it's primary ecosystem services, secondary, it is done through measurement, which is really important today. Next, please. And to demonstrate the ecosystem services of photosynthetic biomass, I'll just demonstrate some of the things so you'll understand how ecosystem services work. What I will demonstrate is primary and secondary. Next, please. Next. Evapotranspiration. All leaves and plants take water that's in the soil, take it through the roots, into the trunk, through the leaves, and out. What it does, it cleans water. It picks up polluted water from the ground. All groundwater is generally polluted, and it releases them as clean water. This is a function that all plants and forests do. They clean groundwater for us so that we can drink water into the future, and we do not recognize the value of the service. Next, please. Next, here. Trees and plants clean groundwater at the rate of about 50,000 liters per large tree per year. And this water is added into the atmosphere and comes down as rain for us to drink. Without the forest, the cleaning function of groundwater will be reduced. This is a primary ecosystem service. Next, please. And the mountain forests also, or cloud forests and rainforests all trees produce cloud condensation nuclei. All clouds are created through a nucleus around which water can condense. Over the ocean, it's made by dimethyl sulfide, created by phytoplankton. Over the land, it is created by trees and plants, releasing aerosols and bacterial particles, mostly aerogenes and pseudomonads from the stomata. It has been estimated that a global increase in the albedo, the whiteness of the clouds, by 1 to 2% can diminish the warming effect of carbon dioxide by 50 years. This is CSIRO in Australia who was saying this. So if you create forests and create better clouds, we can also reduce the warming effect. But there is a catch. Next slide, please. You see, there's two types of clouds today. There is the urban generated or the industrial generated clouds that you see here on the left-hand side, and there's the living clouds on the right-hand side, which is created by cloud condensation nuclei from plants and from oceans. The problem is with the urban generated clouds, which are mostly do not rain because there's such a lot of particulate matter there, the condensation will not allow it to come down as rain because there's a huge amount of cloud condensation nuclei in these particular clouds, chemical clouds. The problem is that these things rise into the upper atmosphere and then they increase the warming of the planet. Whereas the low clouds that ride on over the forest are the ones that keep the planet cool. So again, here's another whammy that we get from burning fossil fuel and our industrial lifestyles creating dead clouds that ride high in our skies. Next. And of course, something else that we have to understand with the trees and plants we're working with is, because of the transpiration from their leaves, they create cooling. One tree, USDA has estimated, is equal to about 10 air-conditioned room-size units working 8 hours a day, which is roughly about 1,200,000 British thermal units. So keep this in mind. An acre of trees will give us 540 million British thermal units of cooling per day. This is why when you go into a forest or under a tree in a park, you feel cool because of this effect of cooling, which we must use into the future. I'll talk about it. Next, please. See, other photosynthetic biomass is the only production system that maintains a global oxygen cycle. The destruction of the oxygen cycle is rampant. Forests are being lost, oceans are being destroyed, and the production of oxygen by the natural system is being decreased rapidly. It's been shown very clearly that there's an increase of respiratory diseases in cities today. It's a direct result of lowering oxygen concentrations. As the levels of oxygen fall, these diseases, lung diseases, etc., will increase radically. Next, please. Next. Okay. Of course, with trees and plants, we know that lots of research has been done, and they point out that if we plant trees and plants, we can actually make up for all the oxygen that we breathe. And we can certainly, create much more for the depleting stocks. But that is not an area that has received much attention today. Next, please. And this result, the measurements today are showing that oxygen concentrations are falling through the planet. It has been falling through millennia now, but now, since the Industrial Revolution, we have increased the slope of the fall, and that is starting to be worrying right now. Many people are saying, hey, why don't we put the oxygen back? Because we're taking oxygen out every time we start a car, we light a fire, we take a plane, we breathe, but nobody thinks about putting it back. Next, please. And with climate change, which is the period modification of Earth's climate brought about as a result of changes in the atmosphere, as well as interaction between the atmosphere and various other geologic, chemical, biological, geological factors. This is what the dictionary tells us. Climate change. What is happening? We know carbon dioxide is driving it. But then the industry tell us, don't worry, go plant a tree, the tree will soak up all the carbon, and you give us the rights to put up more greenhouse gas, and we can carry on. Not so. If you look at the figure on the right, what happens? We carbon, burn it, we pay money to put it into a tree, and the tree lives for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. When the tree dies, where does the carbon go? Not back into fossil, but into our atmosphere. Now, The carbon in fossil was 200 million years old. Locking it up for 1,000 years does not make any sense at all. It does not help us at all. It is just carbon laundering. So that's something we should all be aware of when people tell us, oh, plant a tree is going to soak up the carbon dioxide that we are burning. Wrong. We have to look at it much, much more critically. Next, please. And as a consequence of this fossil-led development now, all of us are aware of what's happening around us, all over the world. The global temperatures are going up, 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 starting to rise. Next, please. And the certainty is that we are going to have a hotter future. That is fixed. Next, please. And with that reality, what happens in the trend is there's always an increase in the mean. So there's more hot weather, there's more record hot weather. Today, what is happening in Canada and what's happening in the Western United States and in Europe and in Russia is a great example of what's happening. But the real horror, the real frightening effect is this. Next slide, please. See, chlorophyll. We spoke about this marvelous thing that produces all these primary ecosystem services and ecosystem functions and oxygen and clean water and carbohydrates and timbers and all that stuff. Okay. Chlorophyll is an enzyme. It has an optimum operating temperature at about 37 to 39 degrees. And we know today, you look at the TV, what's happening. The temperatures are going up over 40, 44, 45. What happens then is that agricultural productivity falls for every day that temperature goes up. So we are going to have less and less food production. And if it goes above 46, 47, you will have a complete breakdown and a loss of your plant production. So you have now to consider in all of our designs, what is going to be happening in the future with climate change. Next, please. So what we have to think about then, because we know that if we have trees around our area, the trees bring a cooling factor. And if we can design our gardens, our home gardens and our productive areas surrounded by photosynthetic biomass, then we can indeed start thinking about getting food in a warming climate into the future. Next, please. And then this brings up what are the design considerations for future sustainable agriculture? Can these broadacre monocultures continue to feed the future? In a warming future, we have to think about a landscape where the landscape is punctuated through trees, hedgerows, and other kinds of cooling features, which will allow us to create a sustainable agriculture. And this is the challenge for analog forestry, because we have to be able to come in and create things that are analogous to the forest that gives us a cooling factor, but then also protect our agriculture and give us input. Next, please. So finally, if we create structures that are tree-lined hedgerows or corridors, which give a cooling effect into our internal agricultural production areas, we may start to move into a landscape that will help us to live in this changing future, because the heat is going to be with us, whether we like it or not. It's not going to go away. We have to learn to design how to live in it. And analog forestry, by creating a large amount of biomass, not only as trees, but also as vines, as epiphytes, filling up the three-dimensional space with photosynthetic biomass, we create the coolest possible agricultural futures that we can, And when we do that with that much biomass, we immediately create the possibility for the native biodiversity to have a place where they can sustain their populations into the future. Next. And that is the challenge before all of you. I'll be happy to talk in depth about any of the things that I've spoken about many things. I'm totally open to any questions from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your inspiring overview, Ranil, for sharing your experiences and innovative ideas for forest, land, and soil restoration. And hopefully this will be the first of several webinars where we will have more time, not only at the end of this webinar, but in follow-up too, to continue deepening into these conversations. Thank you now, Perry. We will give you the possibility to share your screen and present. Thank you so much, Ranil.
Thank you.
Let me see. Can my screen be shared? Oh. Isabel, you have my presentation. Could you just do that for me, please?
Let's see, Galo, do you have it, Galo?
Yes, let me just one second, please.
Super. We have a good connection
Oh,
with Cameroon. There we go.
you're sharing now, Cameroon.
Yeah, let me get the file.
There we go.
Good. Are you seeing my screen, everyone?
Not yet, but it's opening up maybe.
We see one window. Can you share the other window? Or maybe the main screen?
Let me see.
Yeah.
Is it okay now?
There we go.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. It's a singular pleasure to be in this webinar, and it's always very difficult to come under the ears of someone like Dr. Ranil to make a presentation of this nature. But I'm going to give a brief overview of what we've been doing in Africa with women, especially within the framework of the Global Alliance for Green Agenda Action, GAGA, and how women have been inspired within this period to undertake analog forestry activities. And so I'm going to share with you the countries that we worked in, the role the women played, the achievements they had so far, and the changes we're envisaging within the framework of the current circumstances we're living in. I'm not going to go deep into what analog forestry is all about. I think Dr. Rani has said a lot about that. But suffice to say that the role of analog forestry actually within our networks in Africa is to provide both the tangible and intangible ecosystem services that the doctor was referring to earlier. And some of these services we all know are water, climate change mitigation, enhancing crop pollination, and ensuring better governance and land tenure security. Of course, the current climate has engendered a lot of changes in the way we work with our participating countries, and some few achievements were gained and activities were also recorded within these past 3-4 years of our engagement with them. Just to mention that we worked in Benin, Cameroon, Ghana, Uganda, and Togo and Zimbabwe. So we worked in 6 countries, providing sensitization and training to over 200 participants. Of course, each country had several different groups that we worked with. And the role they played, the women played in all of these activities were twofold. There was a sensitization role and the training in analog forestry. So Under sensitization, we did a lot of advocacy in land and water rights. We increased network among the practitioners. But since we're focusing more on analog forestry, the key activities that we did with the women look at improve upon their agroecological practices. And so compost production, how to improve also on tree production in nursery development, how to identify species, and also seed collection, as well as maintenance of their demonstration plots. For the achievements so far, we did a lot of in-depth trainings in Benin, Ghana, and Uganda with the women groups, and we drew a lot of inspiration from the sacred forests in Benin, the mangrove forests of Ghana, as well as the mountain forest in Uganda and Cameroon as well. So Zimbabwe was, we did an introductory analog forestry training course with the women in Zimbabwe during the later part of the project. 6 demonstration plots were created in all these countries, I think 1 in each country, and we're in the process of monitoring them. In Ghana, we did a lot of work with the mangrove forest with youths and women, and as so far, Ghana has already appropriated 2 acres of mangrove site for the restoration of the mangrove. So we're working with them to develop that plot. In Uganda, the goal actually is for food security and soil erosion prevention. And with our local organizations there, they have planted over 5,000 seedlings, and there's the valorization of the Amaranthus spinosus plant, which is being undertaken by a lady in one of the groups, which is a key aspect of product development, which we will look into when we go into the standards, the FGP or the PGS standards, and how we can valorize the products coming out from our analog forestry initiatives. So there's this lady who is doing a lot of work in valorizing plants into different derivatives, milk, powder, tea, which is something very laudable, and we could develop it. So these are the pictures of the different women in their nurseries and maintaining the sites of Uganda. This is also the picture of the lady who is valorizing her crop or her plant, the Amaranthus spinosus plant. She's doing some very valuable work out there in Uganda and needs to be promoted. In Togo, there was a lot of reinforcement in land rights awareness. So there was this, the Queen Mothers, which is a group of women who are recognized in the traditional societies in Togo. We did a lot of work to sensitize women to claim ownership for rights and also extended areas under analog forestry production. Suffice to say, Togo has another trainer in analog forestry who is complementing what we are doing with the French language. So they are doing quite some good work also there. In cocoa agroforest. So they are really the agroforestry stretch of the analog forestry production. They're doing a lot of cocoa farming. And so they have increased areas under this cocoa farming, and we're also monitoring that. In Zimbabwe, the key aspect was also food security and drought prevention. So they did a lot of work, even though they came in late into the project, but they have done quite some substantial activities in terms of cover crop management and harvesting, and they have got a lot of knowledge in composting. You can see them making a compost heap, trying to appropriate organic fertilizers for their crops. So these are ladies from Zimbabwe, which is a very drought-stricken country, doing a lot of work. You see them harvesting cowpeas from their farms, and you see on the right of the picture there, they have already started planting pioneer plants in the analog forestry plot. So that too is some monitoring that we have to do with them. As far as Cameroon is concerned, our main intervention in analog forestry in Cameroon is the provision of ecosystem services. Dr. Rani made mention of these services, which is provision of clean water. So we worked a lot in seeing how we can provide improve the water table in the watershed areas in some villages that we worked in. We pioneered working in the northwestern Cameroon. And the statistics are all there for you to see. And I think tenure security was also a key aspect in the work we did. Cameroon were undergoing a lot of war conflict now in the areas of our intervention. And so some internally displaced women were trained, and unfortunately they lobbied and acquired 40 hectares of land from the local chiefs in our target villages. And so what they are doing now is currently doing some tree planting in the areas. And so, which is very good example of how the lobby and advocacy actions that we complemented with the analog forestry activities help in acquiring, help these ladies in advocating for security, and they were able to acquire land to undertake the analog forestry practices, which is very good for the community. So this of doing work in the villages, doing tree planting. And of course, the Kitun water catchment I was referring to, you can look at the left of the picture, that was before our intervention of analog forestry in 2000 and 2004-05. And when we intervened in 2007, the right of the picture till date, these are the current pictures of the site. You can notice the tree lines in the background. What changes are we envisaged within the current circumstances? In the last 3 years, we've been doing face-to-face trainings and hands-on practical exercises with our partners. I'm sure from now henceforth, because of the COVID-19 thing, we're going virtual. So all our trainings now will be done virtually with our partners, and we're currently designing the program for that. Of course, we are emphasizing more on the participants who received training before, to be able to reinforce the training this time and see how we can monitor them to effect most of the things that we introduce to them during the face-to-face events. We shall use a lot of online platforms to monitor the different progresses and the AF plots that will be established. And we shall also share money measurement and monitoring protocols so that we can be able to monitor the different plots that they are establishing and provide mentorship to these participants on how to develop these plots to be able to get the benefits that Dr. Rani was referring to, the ecosystem services that we know analog forestry provides. For perspectives, like I said, the monitoring of the AFP analog forestry plots in the different countries is very key. And so indicators such as the quality of the soil, the biodiversity, the structure of the ecosystem, these are all indicators that we're going to be monitoring over time with our partners in the field, and also try to valorize the key products that are coming from the analog forestry systems. Bastien, the chairman, has a lot of experiences in forest garden products, and I'm sure PGA standards. So we'll be exploiting that to see how products from our partners in Africa can be valorized and brought to the marketplace, and given some standards so that they can get a lot of benefit and additional income. So in a nutshell, these are the activities that we've done so far, and I'll be ready to take any questions to develop more with the various participants. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Isabel.
Thank you very much, Perry, and to the SENDEP team from Cameroon who is joining us today, to Mary Bakia, hello Mary, and to Eric, who are accompanying Perry today on this call. And Perry was mentioning the virtual courses due to not being able to travel anymore. And soon these modules of the English version of the virtual analog forestry training course will be on our website. What we have now are the modules of the Spanish training courses that we gave last year in Latin America, where 24 women promoters graduated as promotoras in analog forestry. Thank you very much, Perry. And we will now pass on to Galo in Ecuador.
Hello, everyone. Let me just a second to share the screen. We are going to present both of us, Diego and I'm gonna try to go ahead and translate to Diego, and we are going to explain the story about REFA and what's REFA and what are we keep doing these years. So first of all, it's an honor and a big opportunity to share some of the experiences that we have here in Ecuador, and to share also all the work that many people have done and in this topic from the beginning. Let me start by saying that here, the year that Ranil, Lorena, and Angelita Suco come to Ecuador is in 1995. We're all stars here in Ecuador. They are in Nuevo Mundo. It's a place near the capital of Ecuador. And it is a place where they decided to start the first project of analog forestry. So here you can see this biological corridor that they planned to do later on. No? Then we can see here Ranil and Lorena propagating bromeliads for the forest to sell. Here we have some things that we want to share with you. As you see here, we have 3 different places that they do the analytics later on, and we do soil and structure and all and you can see that analog forestry increments all the soil production, the density, and also the biodiverse and biomass of all the places that they do analog forestry in Ecuador. Then we have also the opportunity to see big trees or big projects of analog forestry already done. So that's a very unique opportunity to see and to get inspired of really high trees and all these biodiversity of the forest that already exists, and also knowing the people there and their stories about how they managed to earn in 2000 like $187 a month to in 2010 $500. So they achieved to send their kids to universities because of analog forestry. They achieved to earn more money and to build houses for the children also in this farm. This is Vicente Sari with his wife Maria Rosario Marcatoma. They are one of the first people here in Ecuador that embrace analog forestry, and they are now harvesting all this hard work. Diego, do you want to come up? Diego, are you there?
Thank you.
I'm gonna be translated to Diego. So Diego, come on.
If I can translate for him, Galo, if he gives me a little pause after each sentence.
All right. Thank you, Juan. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ya, entonces voy en español. Gracias. Bueno, saludos a todos. Gracias por estar aquí hoy.
Well, greetings to everybody, and thank you for being here with us today.
La forestería análoga en Ecuador empieza a evolucionar y más gente empieza a interesarse. Y es así que Ángel Suco, Lorena y Ranil encienden esta mecha en Ecuador.
Analog forestry is gaining traction and popularity in Ecuador. And it is this way that Ranil and Lorena and others have sparked this fire in Ecuador and started the momentum that we're starting to see here.
Siguiente. Es así que fue hermoso saber que estábamos haciendo forestería análoga sin saber sobre la metodología en sí, pero empezamos a cuidar los árboles antes de conocer la metodología.
One of the things that we learned, which was wonderful to learn, was that we had been doing analog forestry without knowing that we had been doing analog forestry. That is, we started protecting the forests where we live before we'd ever come into contact with this idea of analog forestry as such.
Todo empezó con Ángel Zucco, que compartió su conocimiento, impactó con el concepto de forestería análoga, y Ángel nos llevó a Lorena y Lorena nos llevó a Ranil.
Everything started with Ángel Zucco, who brought to us this idea of analog forestry, and he introduced us to Lorena, who introduced us to Ranil.
Eso llevó a que conozcamos proyectos tan hermosos como el de la profe Eymar Revilla, donde tiene un árbol de 20 años que lo abrazan entre 2 personas.
And this led us to projects as beautiful as the project of Emma Rivilla, who can be seen there hugging a tree that it takes 2 people to wrap around them because of the thickness that they finally achieved with this.
Next. Al conocer a Ranil, tuvimos el privilegio de que él nos pueda compartir el conocimiento. La mente maestra de la forestería análoga nos dio un taller en la ciudad de Santo Domingo, en Ecuador.
Yeah, it was our honor to meet Ranil himself and to have the mastermind behind analog forestry give us a first conference and workshop on how to perform analog forestry in the city of Santo Domingo in Ecuador.
Y eso nos cambió la vida, cambió la forma de ver la naturaleza y de ver al bosque en sí, entenderlo mejor.
And it was life-changing. It changed our way of viewing not just the forest, but how we view nature itself.
Next. Lo genial de la metodología de forestería análoga es que nuestra escuela es el bosque. Vamos al bosque y aquí estamos compartiendo con amigos, aprendiendo en el campo, en la Pachamama.
The amazing thing about analog forestry is that the school is the forest itself. And here you can see us there learning in the Pachamama, in the forest together.
Siguiente. Hoy en Ecuador somos 6 capacitadores acreditados gracias al apoyo de la Red Internacional de Forestería Análoga, RIFA, y 4 promotoras, las cuales tuvimos la oportunidad de formar, de apoyar.
So right now in Ecuador, we are 6 officially accredited practitioners of analog forestry and then 4 promoters.
Next. Más que red de forestería análoga, somos una familia con un objetivo común, que es el regenerar o restaurar ecosistemas.
More than a network of analog forestry, as we're called, what we really are is a family of analog forestry that shares the common objective of restoring the forests of Ecuador.
Next.
And then COVID comes. And what do we do? What do we do to help people to keep going this process? We are stuck in our cities, in our projects, and that's when Lorena have this great idea to make like little boxes of life, little boxes that can help food security, and also we can enhance with people and trying to help the most ¿Me puedes traducir un poco, Juan? Y mil disculpas.
Of course.
I'm trying to. Entonces,
no. You can go in Spanish.
hicimos estas cajas de vida que nos permitieron llegar a gente de escasos recursos que tenían dificultades alimenticias en este momento.
So we started producing these little boxes, which we called boxes of life, that would help, especially people in low-income areas, to have some measure of food sovereignty and food security in the middle of this pandemic.
And also, nosotros también llegamos a conocer muchas más personas y más personas también se involucraron en la red para formar esta estrategia de mejorar la vida, ¿no? Siempre teniendo en cuenta que no solo eran plantas medicinales, plantas alimenticias, sino también árboles forestales, las que entregamos dependiendo de la persona y el lugar.
And through these Boxes of Life initiative, the network grew and we met tons of people who were interested in working right now, and that the immediacy of this project brought it home to them. And it's important to remember that in these boxes that we gave people, we included not only plants that could be used for food and medicinal plants, but also forest plants. And so everybody would get a combination within their box.
Yes, as you can see here, 1 year later of giving this guy that's called Luis Aguabil, who is Sachila's community, he grew up this box into his little forest, and here is the end result of this. So this is a week before, this week before. So we have smile faces, and he's very proud of his plants. And we also came up with idea of exchanging seeds, and this is where we come into one family. We exchange a lot of seeds from Amazon to the coast, and complex our systems, and also bring more food to animals, and try to understand and more about forest itself. Dieguito.
La forestería análoga ha unido a un grupo de personas muy, muy valiosas, con mucho conocimiento y conciencia.
Analog forestry here has brought together an incredibly valuable group of people that are united by their consciousness.
Entonces, en este mapa podemos ver las fincas en las que estamos haciendo nuestros proyectos de forestería análoga. Tenemos nuestras parcelas de forestería análoga.
So in this map, you can see all the sites where we have our analog forestry projects. You can see where we have the actual analog forestry parcels here.
Estamos felices de poder decir hoy que tenemos 14 fincas registradas y georreferenciadas que están practicando, y son bosques que están en desarrollo aplicando el sistema de forestería análoga.
We are happy to report that we have currently 14 registered and geo-referenced parcels where we are doing analog forestry.
En estas fincas tenemos árboles semilleros, tenemos provisión de alimentos, frutas exóticas, proyectos turísticos, es decir, podemos vivir del bosque y vivir dignamente.
And within these 14 sites, we are growing exotic fruits, we are growing various types of food stuff, we're growing seeding touristic projects going on there. So these sites are active, they're generating income, and we can live off them right now.
Next, please. Uno de los principales objetivos de la Red Ecuatoriana de Forestería Análoga es la capacitación. Y tenemos a nuestro máximo exponente, que su nombre es Ángel Suco.
So Probably the primary purpose of the Ecuadorian network of analog forestry is training, giving people capacitation so that they can do this themselves. And in this, our main communicator is Ángel Suco.
Con Ángel Suco hemos recorrido varias ciudades y provincias de Ecuador.
With Ángel Suco, we have traveled around various cities and towns in Ecuador,
Dando capacitaciones de forestería análoga a jóvenes, adultos, comunidades, pueblos nativos, decenas y decenas de capacitaciones a lo largo de esta experiencia. Ángel Suco tiene más de 25 años practicando y promoviendo la forestería análoga.
and with Ángel Suco, we have done countless workshops and training sessions for people, both for young people and adults for different sectors of society. And Ángel Suco has at this point more than 25 years of experience training people in analog forestry.
Next, please. Esta foto me encanta porque muestra la esencia de lo que hacemos. O sea, es enseñar en el bosque. El bosque es la escuela, el bosque es la universidad.
I love this photograph because it shows the essence of what we do here in the Ecuadorian network of analog forestry, which is to give classes within the forest. As Galo was saying, the forest is the classroom itself. And so there we are.
Next. Como Red Ecuatoriana de Forestería Análoga, estamos impactando en sectores públicos, privados, estamos en municipios, estamos en prefecturas y logramos conseguir impactar en empresas privadas.
As an Ecuadorian network of analog forestry, we are having impacts on both the public and the private sectors. We're having impacts at the prefecture level, at the municipality level, and even upon the practices of private corporations.
Lo último que nos han pedido a la red es diseñar e implementar un bosque de 50 hectáreas en una plantación de banano. Es un proyecto privado y por conciencia quieren empezar a recuperar, por lo menos en parte, un ecosistema.
And actually, the latest project that we've gotten is that we've been asked to develop a 50-hectare forest upon a banana plantation. And this is a private project that is being financed by a banana company who alone has gone sort of the initiative to start to regenerate the lands that they've used.
Muchas gracias a todos y un abrazo de la Pachamama.
And so thank you to everyone for listening and a big hug from the Pachamama.
Yeah, many thanks to all to listen and an honor to be here. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Galo and Diego, especially for showing those photos of AF at its beginnings in the forests of Ecuador and how AF has grown with new trainers and promoters, all your outreach to families, to producers, to the private sector, your seed exchanges, the Biotiquinas project, which was an inspiration to replicate, by the way, in Central America last year, and your example on how to grow as a network. And now we pass on to our dear friend Tatiana in Peru.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share. Me dicen si se ve bien.
Se ve bien, Tati.
Bien, todo ok. Entonces, hello, everyone. I am Tatiana Espinosa, founder of Arbio Peru. Today, I'm going to briefly tell you about our actions and mission in the Peruvian Amazon. I am very happy and honored to be here, and I'm going to try to do the presentation in English, even I don't speak very very well. I hope you're so. Since 2010, in Arbio, we manage a forestry concession of 2,263 acres. We do research and conservation in Madre de Dios, biodiversity capital of Peru. This is the Arbio forest concession. The concession was classified as forest of low commercial value, and was assigned to reforestation, which allows the forest to be cut down with the excuse or justification of later reforesting. So without Arbio, this forest would now be degraded or turned into a monoculture. So Arbio Peru was born in 2010 to manage this concession. The organization is led by women. My two sisters, they joined me in this mission. We implement biodiversity conservation actions involving civil society and the private sector. What's the great problem that we face is the loss of tropical forest. And talking about the tropical forest lost 2020, we lost 12.2 millions of hectares of tropical forest and 4.2 millions of primary forest loss. This is very serious. And four Amazonian countries are among the 10 most deforested countries in the world. And Peru is the 5th place. We have a record of deforestation with 190,000 hectares last year. With the Amazon forest.
No queda bajarme dos. Okay,
please turn off los micrófonos.
Yeah, somebody has to mute their microphone, please. Thank you.
Well, we know that the Amazon forest is reaching a point of no return in which the ecosystem collapses, dries, and becomes a savanna, losing biodiversity and ecosystem services. The degradation of the water cycle will also be have a severe impact. Agricultural production and lives of millions of people in Latin America are sustained and depend on the water generated by the Amazon. And this flow can be stopped. In Peru, the driver of deforestation is mainly small-scale agriculture, unlike our neighbors, Brazil or Bolivia, where large industry and livestock are stronger than Peru. And it is an opportunity for analog forestry. This small-scale agriculture often occurs by following logging routes. When the forest no longer has trees with commercial value, it is no longer worth anything, and it is cut down to plant monocultures. And like indirect drivers can mention route constructions, corruption, land trafficking, and others like product demand or price of products. In this area, mainly gold, wood or timber, cacao, corn, and what's happened in the Amazon, Peruvian Amazon. Peru obtained a record of deforestation and it represents, it means losing 1,150 soccer stadiums a day. This is in Spanish, but I'm translated. And it means 80 Chihuahuacos trees per day. The Chihuahuaco tree is one of the tallest and oldest tree species in the Amazon ecosystem. It is an emerging species and fulfill many ecological functions. This is a Chihuahuaco tree. This is a standing Chihuahuacos. They can reach up to 60 meters in height and be over 1,500 years old. 1500 años, está bien. Raptors depend on emerging trees for nesting. This happens with the RP eagle, the largest and strongest bird of prey in of the American continent that is currently in a state of threat. I'm going, our cause is defend the Amazon forest and how we do it. I'm going to mention some advocacy actions that we have adopted. First, led by example with actions in the field. We patrol all the area. We built a research station. We study and take care of large trees in danger of illegal logging. We do research on this. Maintain on boundaries, posters installed in hazard areas to protect the forest. Second, we can mention to create community. Create community by information in social media, posters, to create a critical mass, people who support the mission, use the press and others. We also working in local, regional, and international networks like Analog Forestry Network. This is the information we spread and work with local communities and native communities in the basin. Another way to take advocacy actions is through research. We conduct research and demonstrated that it's not sustainable to cut Chihuahuaco trees due to their slow growth and low recruitment rate. 50% of the population of this species are over 100 years old. And this species take more than 300 years? 300 years to reach the cutting diameter. See? In natural forest. Studying and knowing the forest, we can give darle valor, give the value. Here, acá no lo he traducido, a ver si alguien me ayuda en esta parte. help me translate this part, please. We want to give boost. Here I show you a comparison, I don't know.
Comparison?
Comparison árbol pie, a living tree with a cutting tree. A living tree don't have value, but commercial value 0, and a cutting tree commercial value high commercial value, no? High demand in international market, but this means the first link in a chain, no, of deforestation. A ver. ¿Se entiende, no?
Yes.
The research we carry out is translated into the platform, one platform, for the adoption of big Amazon trees that I show you here. This is a web-based platform to capture microfinance, by which is possible to adopt one big Amazon tree and protect it under your name. The funds are used to cover the expenses of the Defenders of the Forest initiative, which includes forest surveillance and monitoring to ensure its protection. Obviously, promoting analog forestry is a way to control, also to control forest loss, because analog forestry is going to protect the soil and make it sustainable in the long term. Not like a monoculture that impoverishes the soil and generate more deforestation. It is a very good option to implement forestry and analog forestry in a non-timber concessions in the region and in areas near the roads or highways. Analog forestry helps protect the forest, and there is a great potential in Amazon products, such oils from palms, diverse species of palms, cosmetic products, superfoods, Amazonian fruits, etc. In Madre de Dios, we have a demonstration plot with 28 medicinal species and Amazonian fruit trees. And we participate in training women leaders as promoters in analog forestry, in my case with women from Bolivia and Paraguay. Well, since 2018, no, de 2018.
2018.
Well, we have received the different recognitions, and I show this because that allowed me to reach the media and press to do this, no, to make the trades visible. There are many trades like illegal logging, invasion of agricultural crops, corruption, land trafficking, organized crime, absence of authorities in the field, lack control, lack supervision, and others. And this is important, not to make visible all the problems in the forest, bring the problems of the forest to the people, because we are very separate of the forest. Principally here in Peru, people of the coast or the great cities are very, ¿cómo se dice?, alejados de lo que sucede, that success in the Amazon. And this will with this notes, conference, and others, education and others. So this is de manera resumida, resume about the actions we take to conserve the Amazon forest and to promote the forest conservation and restoration. Coexisting with the forest, rainforest, Amazon forest is possible and it's totally necessary. And now I want to show you one video, short video about with the voice of Chihuahuaco. Please, Galo, puedes por favor compartir el videito.
Claro que sí, dame un segundo.
Sí. Tal vez comentarles, a ver un poquito acá. That is important to hacer visibles los problemas.
To make visible
Because,
the problems?
Yeah, because the Arbio concession is the tip of iceberg. Eso le digo porque in this case, we use to make visible how complicated is to carry out sustainable activities in a forest area. And we want to be hacer visible, bueno, visibilize.
Visible.
Visible, to make visible what happens in all the Amazon, the Peruvian Amazon, because what happened in Arbio happened in all Peruvian Amazon. So it's important to make visible this, because it's very difficult to, it's more easy be illegal, no? or informal, to be formal, or to do something sustainable.
Okay, let me put the video on.
Ok, dejo de compartir, ¿no?
Okay.
I'm the Chihuahuaco, over 1,000 years old, and today I've decided to speak up to change history. I'm one of the oldest guardians of the rainforest in Madre de Dios. Through my leaves, I bring water to the planet. In my canopy, I embrace life and give it a home, sheltering and caring for it so it can grow. But today, I am losing this battle. And if I lose, not only will I be losing, the jaguars will lose as well. So will the butterflies, the macaws, the sloths, the rivers, the oceans, the sky, the cities, your home, the planet. There's still time to change this. By adopting a tree with Arabio, you'll be joining in the protection of the 916 hectares of rainforest we take care of in the Las Piedras River Basin in Madre de Dios. This is one of the most threatened forests in South America, in danger from illegal logging and mining. We can save the rainforest. Visit arabioperu.com.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tati, and to the full Arbio team for your incredible and valiant efforts in the Amazon forest. Tati has shown us, and with this video, the threats to the forest, but the valiant because of the threats to the forest defenders. And Tati has shared with us how other concessionists close to where they are protecting the forest have been threatened and also murdered for protecting the Amazon. So thank you so much, Tati, for sharing. And yes, please share also the website of Arbio. They have a very easy way to explain and make donations to protect these Chihuahuaco and other trees. Well, we have come to the end of our presentations, And several of you have some questions, which we have directed to several of the speakers. And I'm not would like to start with one or two of the questions that you have received, and also Bastien maybe to follow up.
Yeah, sure. Hi. I've got one question here. That's the only one I got up to now. And that is what you sent me, Isabel, and that is, what do we say? Better articulate the notion of primary, secondary, and tertiary ecosystem services. I think for everybody, it's really easy. The primary ecosystem service is signified by the leaf. It's in the leaf that everything begins. So it's a simple thing to teach any child. The leaf catches sunlight and then gives the sunlight for us to use. Primary ecosystem service. The secondary ecosystem service is what comes from that leaf. For instance, the timber, the tree itself. That is the secondary ecosystem service, the structure of the tree that then contributes to the ecosystem.
670.
Yes. And then the tertiary ecosystem service is the shade of the tree, the beauty of the tree, the way we relate to it in a cultural or other value system. So this is the way we have to look at ecosystem services, because an ecosystem is life, begins with life. So there's always the first step, and it's really clear, scientifically valid. The second step, the production of it, and then the biosynthesis and onwards. So that's how we would explain to somebody, if you're out there teaching people, this whole question of ecosystem services, primary, secondary, tertiary, etc.
Thank you, Ranil. Bastien, would you like to take the second question?
Yes, thank you, Isabel. So it's the second question of Karina Bautista. So she will hear it in the replay. So what are the markets that can sustain analog forestry financially? So yeah, in the description you gave of the situation in the Galapagos, what we can say is that it's a phenomena that has been done worldwide, which is called the colonization of many territories, with the consequence of the destruction of the habitats and of the original land of many products, for example, or the transplantation of some plants abroad. And then comes the massification and the commoditization of these products. And all these phenomena create a cheapization of the food supply, a cheapization of the products and services provided by the ecosystem. And this cheapization, because of the commoditization, is what put the pressure on the producers with very low prices, right? All in the name of the consumers market, right? The so-called consumer societies. So the very basic point of rebuilding fair prices and fair trade and exchanges is come back to the production costs, right? So what is a production cost? It's a cost of production that will include the primary, the secondary, and eventually the tertiary services of the ecosystems, as Dr. Rani said. If we are able to create a price that include all these services, we will have what is called a fair price. And so with this fair price, we can retribute the farmers. Now, to be more practical, I mentioned the forest garden product certification, so you should have a look at it, because this has been a way to put products from the secondary services on the market. And when you buy a forest garden product, you don't only retribute the farmer in a fair way, you also include social ecological programs that are put in place thanks to our promoters and inspectors in analog forestry. And finally, last but are not support new initiative of the bioeconomy I mentioned, which enable us to invest in the photosynthetic biomass activity by recognizing and placing value on the photosynthetic biomass activity. So these are the way that we are focusing on as the International Analog Forestry Network for giving a good value and a fair retribution for the activity of farmers with analog forestry. Not to mention the diversification of crops that analog forestry provides. And it has been shown that the forest garden products are marketed 5 to 10 times the local market price. So this is an example that we shall follow.
Thank you, Bastien. We've received a couple of other questions. Another one is directed to Ranil. And you're welcome to send any questions or comments by chat. And we will soon be wrapping up. But those who want to stay on and just have an informal moment and we can chat, most welcome. Ranil, do you want to go to your second?
Sure. Let's see, you've sent me a thing. Okay. This is on rice farming systems, right? And looking at the Indonesian innovations. And what we're finding out is, yes, it's great. We are using the SRI system in Sri Lanka for intensification, but also we are finding out that going back to the traditional rice varieties is helping hugely in terms of rice field biodiversity and nutrition. In Sri Lanka, we've lost about 500 traditional varieties in the last 50 years. Now they're building them back, and now we find some of the old varieties coming back onto the marketplace. So this is, when you said good gluten-free, nutritious, organic red rice, we have red, we have black, different varieties of traditions. So every country in terms of rice should be looking back into its traditional systems. And in Sri Lanka, if you're interested in the rice field system, it's a co-evolved system. And for anybody interested, I have a paper that I've done on what happens to the rice field ecosystem when we opt to take a tractor and go into the green revolution. The loss is horrendous. But well, there we are. That's where we should be going. We should be looking at what we have, the genes of the past, to help us get into the future. That's the first question. And the second one is how to measure different ecosystems. Well, within the framework of analog forestry, what we are doing basically, consider when we start making a formula, we are looking at the three-dimensional structure of a forest. So if we look only at trees and tree species, we only capture the photosynthetic biomass of the canopy. But if we look at the other structures, the epiphytes, the vines, the mosses, and start including the other elements into our system, we increase the amount of photosynthetic biomass. And there is another feature here, and that is with trees. As trees grow, they do a wonderful job of creating primary ecosystem services. But when they reach maturity, it's called a compensation factor. They grow up, and then at a certain point, the mass of the tree itself takes up all the oxygen and the energy that the tree produces. So it's only maintaining itself when it becomes huge and mature. But at that time, in an analog forest, that's where your epiphytes come in. That's where your vines come in. And these things do not have a compensation factor because they have no large woody mass to maintain. And then they take over the job of providing the net ecosystem service, primary ecosystem services of oxygen, clean water. This is the beauty of following the process of a forest and being analogous to a forest in all its growth processes.
Thank you very much, Ranil.
Sure.
I am thinking it is now almost 2 hours into our web. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Someone asked about hearing from the AF practitioners on the ground and how they would really appreciate the help of the IAFN the most. So what we are planning from the IAFN is to have a follow-up webinar shortly, probably a month from now, maybe sooner. And we will bring voices of AF practitioners from different parts of the world who have not participated in this webinar. And we're now connected by email also. And if there's any particular themes that you would like us to touch on, more than welcome to get back to us. Maybe right now we can just close, thanking everybody for their presentations and for you joining, and maybe just have anybody who wants to stay on, we can just have an informal closing together. Is that a good idea? Or would somebody else would like to present another comment for any of the speakers or any question?
I think
Thank you, Isabel. You've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mikey.
Well,
Any last words? Hello, everybody.
Isabel, maybe we can ask everybody
Yes, John.
just open your videos for taking a
Yes.
picture. Thank you.
To take a photograph and to greet ourselves. Hi, Luby.
I think John's hand is up. John from Uganda, I think he has a question also. Kaganga.
Okay, so be prepared, everybody. Open your cameras.
sure.
Abramos cámaras
I'm
todos
counting.
para la foto.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Just a moment. We have a lot of people to say hi.
Hello.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Hi. Hello.
Patata.
Hello.
Patata.
Hi, John.
From
Good to see you.
Hey, you are there.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you.
Hi. Madam Sarah.
I've seen running. I've seen running. I've seen running.
That's great.
Who was there?